Emma Cole met Daniel Hayes on a rainy Thursday, the kind of day that made loneliness echo louder than thunder. He stood beside her at the gallery, eyes tracing the same painting, two silhouettes lost in the mist. "You look like you understand it," he said, voice calm, certain. It wasn't just a pickup line, it was a mirror reflecting her hunger to be seen. Within weeks, he became her rhythm, calling when she didn't, appearing when she needed him most. He said he just wanted to keep her safe. It sounded romantic, almost cinematic. When he brushed a strand of hair from her face and whispered, "I'll never let anything hurt you," she believed him. What Emma didn't realize was how subtly anything would come to include her own freedom. It started with something small, Daniel Hayes asking Emma Cole to text him when she got home. Then it became asking who she was with, where she was going, what time she'd be back. "I just worry," he'd say, smiling. The words soft but heavy. Emma admired his consistency, the way he remembered her schedule, the way his presence made the world seem less unpredictable. She told Lena Moore once, laughing, "He's just protective, not possessive." But the way Daniel's tone changed when another man laughed too long at her joke, or when she missed a call, there was a flicker, sharp and cold, the kind you feel before a storm breaks. The first argument didn't sound like one, Daniel said. "I just don't like how that guy looks at you." His tone was velvet wrapped around glass. Emma tried to reassure him, but reassurance never seemed enough. "He began driving her everywhere, so you don't have to deal with strangers." It felt like care, until she realized she hadn't taken the bus alone in weeks. When she mentioned a work trip, his eyes darkened. "I can't relax if you're not here." That night he held her so tightly it almost hurt, but she mistook pressure for passion, fear for devotion. By the end of the first month, Daniel had her passwords not because he asked, but because she offered. "If it makes you feel safer," she'd said, and it did, for a while. He started checking her social media, framing it as curiosity. When she caught him scrolling through her messages at 2 a.m., he didn't apologize. "I just needed to know you're not hiding anything," he said, voice steady, eyes calm. The word hiding stayed in her head long after he fell asleep beside her. The room felt smaller that night, even with the window open. Lena Moore called it too much too soon. But Emma only heard love, the kind that filled the silence she feared most. Daniel showed up at her work with coffee, with lunch, with reasons. When she tried to have dinner with Lena, he appeared there too, smiling, saying, "I missed you." His presence was constant, comforting, and slowly consuming. One night, Lena looked him in the eye and said, "You don't have to follow her everywhere." Daniel smiled, but his eyes didn't. Emma laughed it off, but in her chest, something shifted, a tremor beneath the surface of devotion. Emma Cole didn't notice the exact moment Daniel Hayes began editing her world. It was in the tiny pauses between his compliments, "You look beautiful," followed by, "But that dress shows a bit much." It sounded protective, loving even. Over dinner, he'd tilt his head and ask, "Why do you need to wear makeup when you're with me?" Each question felt innocent, but together, they rewrote her freedom into obedience. Emma started changing clothes before he arrived, started second-guessing laughter, started apologizing for being herself. Control never came with chains, it came disguised as care. It wasn't just her clothes anymore. Daniel began suggesting which friends didn't respect her enough, which people used her. When Emma mentioned meeting Lena Moore for lunch, he said, "She fills your head with negativity." His tone wasn't angry, it was weary, as if protecting her from unseen harm. Emma canceled, telling herself it was just easier. Soon, her world shrank to the sound of his voice and the vibration of his messages. When her phone didn't buzz, she felt hollow. When it did, she felt watched. The balance of safety and fear became impossible to tell apart. When Emma questioned his constant presence, Daniel smiled. "You don't understand, Emma, the world isn't kind." His words carried warmth, but his eyes measured her reaction. He began timing her responses, leaving subtle pauses when she was late to answer. "You're busy again." He'd ask, gentle but sharp enough to draw guilt. Emma found herself explaining everything: where she was, why she was late, who she saw. It became a habit, a ritual of reassurance. The freedom she once had now felt reckless, dangerous, selfish. And somehow, that guilt felt like love. It became a rule without being spoken. If she didn't answer, he would arrive. Sometimes at her door, sometimes at her office, sometimes just outside, waiting. "I was in the neighborhood," he'd say with that gentle smile that masked obsession. Emma's co-workers found it sweet a man devoted enough to care. She laughed along, pretending she didn't feel the quiet panic in her chest. Every gesture of love now carried a warning. The air between them was no longer safe. It was conditional, timed, and constantly measured. One evening, Emma found her reflection strange, a woman she didn't recognize. Her smile had become cautious, her words filtered. Daniel called again, asking where she was. "Just out for air," she replied softly. He exhaled, long and slow. "You don't need air. You need peace," he said. The line went silent, heavy with ownership. Emma realized how long it had been since she'd done something without permission. Freedom felt foreign now, and that frightened her more than his control ever had. Emma Cole used to wake to sunlight and ideas. Now she woke to silence, waiting for Daniel Hayes' messages before moving. He began managing her calendar to help her stay focused. Her freelance clients slowly vanished as Daniel found reasons each one was draining her energy. He called it care. She called it balance. But balance meant dependency, and dependency meant invisibility. When Lena Moore called one morning, Daniel answered instead, saying Emma was asleep. She wasn't. She stood by the window, listening to her own name through his calm, possessive voice. Hi. He told her that her friends didn't understand her the way he did. That people only wanted pieces of her, while he wanted all of her. "I'm the only one who truly sees you," he whispered once, and she believed him because no one else was left to see her. Emma stopped returning Lena's messages, stopped attending family dinners, stopped existing outside Daniel's reach. Her world became the echo of his approval. When he praised her, she felt alive. When he withdrew, she felt erased. Love had become a performance for survival. When Emma mentioned missing her family, Daniel smiled without warmth. "They make you doubt yourself," he said, "and I can't watch them undo everything I've built for you." His phrasing made control sound noble, as though he were protecting her from her own life. That night he took her phone to give her peace. Hours passed in silence. The world outside forgotten. Emma sat at the window, listening to the wind, realizing the sound of freedom had become foreign, distant, something she now needed permission to hear. Days began to blend. Emma no longer knew when she'd last stepped outside alone. Daniel managed her groceries, handled her emails, even spoke to clients under her name. "You're too sensitive for their world," he said. His care had boundaries invisible, unspoken, unbreakable. When she looked in the mirror, she noticed how small her world had become. The walls felt closer, the silence louder. Sometimes she'd whisper to herself just to hear another voice, but even that felt dangerous. The last time Emma tried to leave, it wasn't a fight, it was silence. Daniel simply stared at her suitcase, then said, "I thought you were better than running." His tone was heartbreak dressed in threat. She froze. He stepped closer, hand gentle on her shoulder, voice breaking into a whisper. "Don't make me lose you like this." She unpacked that night, not because she wanted to stay, but because fear spoke louder than reason. For the first time, She realized love shouldn't require permission to breathe. Emma Cole began to see the lies hiding in Daniel Hayes' tenderness. His compliments felt rehearsed, his affection timed. She caught him checking her messages even after promising he wouldn't. When she confronted him, his voice was calm, almost pitying. "You're imagining things, Emma." The way he said her name made her doubt herself. That was his genius, turning her instincts into guilt. Later that night, she found herself whispering apologies to him while he slept. For what? She didn't even know. The next morning, Daniel brought her flowers, white lilies, her favorite. He placed them on the table and said, "I know I've been distant." His voice cracked in practiced sorrow. Emma felt the old pull of compassion. She wanted to fix what he broke. But when she leaned in to hug him, he whispered, "Don't give me a reason not to trust you again." It wasn't a threat. Not exactly, more like a prayer she was expected to answer. Emma smiled, because anything else would have been dangerous. Emma began writing again, small sketches of emotions she couldn't say aloud. She hid her notebook under the bed, as if her thoughts were contraband. One evening, she came home to find it open on the counter, Daniel flipping through pages. "You don't have to hide from me," he said, smiling. But his hand tightened around the book as he closed it. She said nothing, heart pounding in her chest. The room smelled like the lilies he'd given her, now wilting petals, soft, dying quietly, just like her words. When Lena Moore finally reached her, Emma answered with a trembling whisper. Lena's voice was sharp, alive, a sound from another world. "Emma, you have to leave him." Emma stared at Daniel across the room as he typed on his laptop, calm and focused, as if nothing were wrong. "He's good to me," she said, voice small, eyes wet. "He loves me." Lena's silence carried more truth than any reply. Emma hung up, realizing that love shouldn't need justification. The silence that followed was deafening. That night, Daniel found the courage she was beginning to lose. "You've been distant," he said softly, though his eyes burned. Emma's silence was his proof. He stepped closer, hands trembling not with fear but control. "All I ever did was love you." The sentence hung in the air, half confession, half weapon. Emma realized then that love had never been the problem, it was the cage, built in its name. And for the first time, she didn't apologize. It started with a sound, the shatter of glass against tile. Daniel Hayes' calm was gone. "I saw you texting," he said, voice trembling with rage he couldn't disguise. Emma Cole stood frozen, words dissolving on her tongue. "It was Lena," she whispered, but he was already pacing. "You promised me honesty." His words cracked like thunder. For the first time, Emma saw not protection, but possession, not love, but fear. The room seemed smaller than ever. Somewhere beneath the noise, she realized she had stopped loving him long before this moment. The next morning, he was quiet, too quiet. The silence was worse than shouting. Daniel made her breakfast, humming softly as if nothing had happened. "We all say things we don't mean," he said, handing her a cup of coffee. His smile was fragile, his eyes unreadable. Emma nodded, but her heart raced. Every gesture now felt rehearsed. His calm, a mask she could finally see through. For the first time, she didn't drink the coffee. For the first time, she wondered if survival meant pretending until she could leave. That evening, Daniel insisted on taking her phone. "You don't need distractions," he said, voice flat. When she hesitated, his hand gripped her wrist, not hard, but enough. The look in his eyes wasn't anger anymore. It was panic. "Don't make me do this," he whispered. Emma realized he wasn't protecting her. He was protecting his illusion. She pulled her hand away. His shock was almost childlike, as if her defiance rewrote his reality. For the first time, Daniel looked afraid of her silence. When Daniel left the room, Emma packed her bag. She didn't plan, she reacted. Her hands shook as she grabbed her passport, her laptop, the notebook he once read without permission. Every sound in the apartment felt amplified, every footstep a threat. When the door opened again, her pulse stopped. "Going somewhere?" he asked. His tone wasn't raised. That made it worse. Her mouth opened, but no words came. He stepped closer, slow, deliberate. The air between them was a held breath that refused to break. The silence cracked first, not his voice, but the sound of her resolve. "You don't own me," she said. The words felt foreign, yet they vibrated with power. Daniel froze, disbelief etched across his face. "You wouldn't survive without me," he said. But even he didn't sound convinced. Emma stepped past him, every step heavier and freer than the last. Behind her, his whisper broke. "I was just trying to love you." But love built on fear cannot survive the truth. She didn't look back. Emma Cole didn't sleep that night. She listened to the apartment, breathed the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock, the faint creak in the hallway Daniel Hayes always crossed before dawn. She had packed and unpacked her bag 3 times. Every sound felt like a signal, every shadow a question. Freedom waited just beyond the door, yet her body wouldn't move. When she finally stood, her reflection caught her pale, determined, unfamiliar. She whispered, "You deserve to leave," and for once believed herself. She waited until the elevator doors closed before breathing. Every floor that passed felt like a countdown to freedom. In her mind, Daniel's voice followed her, quiet, reasoning, convincing. "I'm doing this for you." She stepped into the lobby, light flooding her face for the first time in months. The city was waking up, people laughing, engines starting, someone playing a song too loudly from their car. It all sounded foreign and beautiful. Emma realized she wasn't escaping him anymore. She was returning to herself. Her phone rang before she reached the street corner, his name glowing like a warning. She silenced it, fingers trembling. Then another call. Another. The rhythm of control echoing even as she ran from it. She ducked into a small cafe, heart pounding. The barista smiled. "Row morning?" Emma nodded, unable to speak. The warmth of the cup between her hands reminded her she still existed. When her phone rang again, she didn't look. She turned it face down, a small rebellion, but it felt like freedom. By noon, Daniel had called 37 times. Then, silence. That silence was louder than the ringing. Emma boarded a train without thinking, hands tight around her bag. The motion soothed her. The distance grew in quiet miles. Through the window, the world blurred, her old life shrinking into background noise. She watched people reading, sleeping, smiling beside strangers. It felt almost unfair how easy they made freedom look. But as the train moved, so did she, for the first time, by her own choice. When the train stopped, Emma didn't know where she was, only that it was far enough. She stepped onto the platform, feeling the air shift. Her phone buzzed one last time. She watched it light up, then fade, then die in her hand. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was clean. The kind of silence that asks, "What now?" She didn't know the answer yet. But she finally had the space to find it. Freedom wasn't loud. It was quiet, trembling, and real. The first night alone felt strange. No footsteps, no messages, no voice correcting her tone. Emma Cole lay awake in a small rented room by the sea, listening to waves instead of fear. The quiet pressed against her like something unfamiliar but kind. She realized that safety wasn't silence born of control, it was peace earned by release. She sent one text, the first on her own terms. "I'm okay. Please don't call." Then she turned off her phone, letting the ocean speak for her. Morning arrived soft and unhurried. Emma walked barefoot along the shore, each step erasing the one before. For months, she had measured her worth by someone else's gaze. Now, she measured it by distance between her footprints, between herself and the life she escaped. The wind tugged at her hair, carrying away fragments of who she was. Freedom didn't feel like joy. It felt like breathing without permission. Weeks passed before Emma stopped checking over her shoulder. She found a local studio, began sketching again, hands hesitant at first, then certain. Her art was different now. Fewer faces, more light. One afternoon, she painted an open door on a blank canvas and realized it was the first image in years that didn't need a shadow. When she stepped back, she didn't see fear. She saw space. Space was freedom. One evening, a message arrived from Lena Moore. Dinner? No questions, just food. Emma hesitated, then smiled. Meeting Lena again was like stepping into color after months of gray. They didn't talk about Daniel Hayes. They didn't need to. Lena simply said, "You look like yourself again, for the first time." Emma didn't shrink from the words. She laughed, a sound that didn't need permission. Months later, Emma walked along the same pier where Daniel once watched her from the fog. The sea hadn't changed, but she had. The wind no longer carried fear. It carried her own voice. She whispered, "You're free," not as a statement, but as a truth she'd finally earned. Freedom, she learned, isn't the absence of control, it's the quiet certainty that no one else defines your worth. She closed her eyes and smiled into the wind.